and those were some fun memories back when you worked for Pepsi. But now you're at
Right.
Harman, and what an interesting company. I mean, maybe just to kick it off, could you tell us a little bit about what you guys do at Harman? I know a lot of us have heard about it and know about some of your brands like JBL, but would love to hear a little more about what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jimmy, same. Great to see you again. And as we just met some of these 40 under 40 winners, just reality of the people you meet in your career, you're going to continue to be reuniting with them as we were this week. So keep those networks strong.
Yeah, good
Yeah, to your
segue.
point. Yeah, to your point. So I was at Pepsi for about 9 years. Spent a couple of years doing marketing for a television network, and then have since moved on to Harman, where I've been for the last almost 4 years. And Harman it's actually, people think of, oh, Harman Kardon, I know those speakers, but Harman's actually a connected technologies leader. And it's everything from connected car to car audio to professional sound to consumer audio. And for consumer, it's probably where most people know it. That's your headphones, your portable speakers. Hopefully everyone has a JBL Flip at home, all the way up to luxury audio and some of our other products. We're actually a subsidiary of Samsung. And as it relates to the brands that we have, we call Harman a house of brands. So again, people go right to Harman Kardon. Hopefully a lot of people go to JBL, but it's also Mark Levinson, Bang & Olufsen, Infinity, Revel, AKG. I mean, there's tons of brands that we have under this house. For the purposes of today and really where we're doing a lot of our Gen Z thinking, we'll talk about JBL specifically. Just
Okay.
2 seconds on me. I run all forms of brand engagement for the company. So VP marketing across all brand engagement for North America. So that's everything we do from digital, social, media, sports, music, gaming, influencer seeding, basically the B2C side of the brands.
Okay, fantastic. Wow, you have a lot of responsibilities there. How does JBL approach Gen Z?
Yeah, no, great question. And that's a compliment coming from the CEO of Spin, but thank you for saying that I have responsibility. Gen Z's it's been a really interesting journey for us because even 3 years ago, right, it was got to win with millennials. That was the buzz, right? And the reality is when you look at Gen Z, you have this kind of like spectrum, right? So we just heard from a trailing Gen Zer or a leading Gen Zer who has purchasing power, right? But then you also have 16 and 15-year-olds who are getting themselves into the point where they have purchasing power. So they really have influence on the home, right? So it's asking for a speaker or asking for a pair of headphones and hopefully by name. We've done a lot of work to try to understand some of the differences between the millennial and the Gen Z audience. And what we're finding, and these are probably words that you're going to hear about throughout these types of panels, but it's authenticity, right? It's about showing people who look like them and act like them and relate to them. I think, if you look back 10 years, right, the big word was FOMO. And it was all about like, find the biggest celebrity, get literally the biggest name you could find, throw a pair of headphones on them, and that's success. But the reality is today's consumer, this Gen Z consumer's got a much more kind of real approach. And they want to find people they believe in at a deeper, level and relate to. And so it's not about just find the artist with the most whatever album sold or whatever it may be, but really build experiences and connections with people that they relate to.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah, that sounds like you've had a lot of experience with Gen Z at multiple brands, and I know I recall that you had talked about you had been at a Brand Innovators last fall, and you had talked about JBL Quantum, and you mentioned that you had some news that you wished you could have shared. What can you tell us about it now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was a funny time because we were just about to launch to announce something we've now completed for year one. But so we launched JBL Quantum I'm sure everyone has a pair, but for those who don't know, it's our gaming headphone line. And we launched it, actually it's the 1 year anniversary now. And one of the things we talked about, and very much along the lines of Gen Z marketing, was you don't just run commercials. You don't put a bunch of 30-second spots on and expect that people are going to say, oh yeah, that's the brand I should go buy. But we launched it through people who we believe this consumer believed in. So we signed 100 Thieves, who is both a lifestyle entity as much as they are professional gamers. We signed some other influencers, and we did much more kind of meaningful connective marketing. At the time, we were about 4 weeks away from announcing something called the Jbl Quantum Cup, which was a gaming tournament that I was like dying to talk about, which we then went and did in December. And it was again, let's go back to that idea. It was do something different, be real, be authentic, and provide a value to our consumers. So we created a 3-day, 3-continent, 3-game tournament. And it was the first of its kind in that consumers could watch, obviously, all do, but they could actually play. So they can actually enter to compete, and they can win whether they compete or they watch. So we created this watch, play, win mentality for this Jbl Quantum Cup, which actually took place in mid-December of 2020.
Nice. Okay. And how did it go?
It was a real true success. I mean, just to put this in perspective, we had 10 million views across. So let me set some context here. It was US, the entire EMEA market, which is Europe, Middle East, Africa, and the Asian market. So a significant portion of the world. We had nearly 10 million views. 1,500 consumers signed up to play across 43 countries, and we had 148 professional gamers in it. So you had all these consumers vying. We basically did like regional play-in tournaments to try to get into the main brackets against the pros. So again, 1,500 people signed up, 10 million views. In the US alone, we had 90 million impressions, 4.5 million views, and 81 million media impressions. It was just a massive success for us.
Wow. Congratulations on the success of Quantum, Chris. That's incredible. And gaming is just such a hot area with Gen Z, and it's so cool. You guys have put yourselves into the middle of it and developed your own franchise. That's really, really interesting.
That's a great word to use. And that's actually how we view this. And we have thoughts for, we did this during a pandemic, right? We launched this knowing there was this absence of E3 and all these other big gaming moments. Yeah. So we decided, let's create something, but not just another thing to watch. Like, let's create something that this consumer could actually participate in. And we did that all on social platforms, right? So on Twitter, if you were on the Twitter streams, you could enter for a chant. There were pop-up contests that happened. And then we used our ambassadors as well. So we had Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks did a bunch of fun gaming content. Jamal Murray, NBA star, actually played in it. Ninja, FaZe Clan, 100 Thieves. I mean, it was just a really big, well-attended multi-day event. And we will look to franchise it, moving forward into 21.
Nice. Wow, man. That sounds incredible. Those are really big ambassadors and big names, FaZe Clan and the others. Wow. That's very cool. Transitioning a bit, when I think of JBL, I think of music. And, as the CEO of Spin, I see you guys a lot around the music industry. How does JBL approach music?
No, and fair question. And I'm glad you think of us in music. That's where we want to be. We look at ourselves, we have 3 cultural pillars: sports, music, and gaming. And quite honestly, we love it when we sit in the middle of the 3. So it's great that we have athletes, and it's great that we sign music ambassadors, and it's great that we do gaming events, but it's the lifestyle of where those live and where they intersect. So we always say that every NBA player wants to be a gamer, every gamer wants to be a musician, every musician wants to be a basketball. Like, it's just this perfect virtuous cycle. So we actually love to sit in the middle. And that goes for any of our cultural pillars. And I always give the joke that, like, you'll see Kemba Walker, who's one of our ambassadors and plays for the Celtics. You'll see him in GQ as much as you'll see him in SI. And we love that because his fashion is as good as his all-star caliber NBA playing. As it relates to music, it's the same thing. I mean, it's not hard to write a check and sign big names, right? You just have to find someone who doesn't have an ambassador deal and you write them a big check. We look for people that we feel like we like to say they're not quite at the top of the hill yet, but they're getting there. But most importantly, that they have stories to tell. And so right now, our global ambassador, one of them is BB Rexa, and we just absolutely think the world of her, both her talent, most things anything we've done and any fun events you and I have been at, but like it meant so much more on a deeper level to connect people, culture, and society.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's so interesting how JBL is so authentic in all three verticals in gaming, sports, music. Like it is all about the genuineness of your brand and finding those creators that really are authentic, as you put it. So yeah, really, really interesting, Chris. Uh, what are you guys doing in college marketing?
Yeah, I mean, you can't talk Gen Z and not think college, right? I mean,
Yeah.
have this, and that's part of that unique moment, right? Where you have this group on the early end of Gen Z who are probably in the workforce, have a credit card, and are making purchases. Then you have this entire massive group of people who are the next generation of shoppers. So we've gone deep in the college market. We launched first and currently a program called JBL Campus, which it's a program. It's a college ambassador program, and what we do is we have this whole filtering process of schools where we find that meet qualifications that feel JBL, right? Big music programs, big sports programs, active social lives, and then we look for ambassadors within them. Those ambassadors then become what we call mini brand managers, and we actually empower them to tell the story of JBL through their lens, right? So
Oh,
the easier, again, going back to the paycheck, right? The easy way is you write a check and you just say, hey, here's a bunch of media, we'll run it by your campus and we'll geo target you and all that. But the reality is, let Gen Z, let college ambassadors tell our story through their lens to people who have trust in them and build that trust. There's this crazy stat that only 30% of Gen Z trust ads, but 99 or 96% will buy a product if a friend tells them to. So we use that insight to launch this campus ambassador program. And then about 6 months ago or 5 months ago, we launched an HBCU version of JBL Campus. And with that, we've built this kind of a second pillar to college marketing where we're bringing on and we're having mentor sessions and speaker sessions to anyone in any of the 100 plus HBCUs who can join these sessions, learn from industry influencers. We typically look for speakers who are also from HBCUs as a level of relatability, and create something with a lot more depth and meaning behind it. So we've got a two-pillar college programs running now for JBL.
wow, that's amazing. That's it sounds like you really have your hands full, and very, very interesting to hear what you're doing with Gen Z and within these colleges and within the HBCUs. Very, very interesting. I know that we've got a little bit of time. We can move to the Q&A portion. And I know I'm not sure if there's any questions yet. Um,
Can I ask you a question?
sure.
I'll just go off the cuff here.
Yeah.
How does Spin, obviously, major music publication, how are you guys looking at Gen Z?
Well, it's been really interesting with Gen Z and how they see Spin, because Spin is celebrating its 36th year as a media publication this year. We one thing we've realized is that our biggest following tends to be more like the Gen X crowd who grew up reading Spin in like the 90s and 2000s, including myself. I think you even said you grew up reading Spin. So
For sure.
um, when our media investment firm acquired Spin from Billboard about a year and a half ago, that was the biggest challenge. Was we've got to spread the word to Gen Z about how cool Spin is. Spin was so cool to us. We've got to show these young kids how cool it is. So the first thing that we did was we went and approached Twitch, and we set up a partnership with Twitch to live stream interviews and produce content with a lot of the talent that Gen X likes. So our approach was, hey, let's do what Spin does best, which is profile emerging artists, profile artists that everyone's heard of, but let's let Gen Z sort of peek over the fence and see what we're doing and have that sort of pull. And then we've also made some strategic decisions about the talent that we work with. We had Machine Gun Kelly on a cover recently, and he's been an interesting bridge from Gen Z to millennials. Well, one, because of his age, but two, because he's dating Megan Fox, who a lot of the Gen X crowd, millennial crowd knows
Sure.
as an actress. And then I think the biggest thing that Spin is trying to show Gen Z is that we have authenticity, that it's
Mhm.
real, it's deep. There's a lot of history with Spin. And so for us, going after Gen Z has been just profiling a lot of the artists that they follow in a really deep and meaningful way, and that we're giving something to them first. As you put it, with the content network you have and with the ambassadors, when we put like Billie Eilish on a cover, we're doing these full blown vignettes, and we're having Billie talk about old Spin covers, and we're really trying to pay it forward to Gen Z and give them some unique storytelling that they won't find from other outlets, and also focus on the music. I think a lot of outlets now, they'll cover fashion, sneakers, everything under the sun, and we're really all about the music, and we're not political. So us versus some of the other brands in the space, in the music space, we don't go super political, which is refreshing to Gen Z. I
Sure.
think that Gen Z cares a lot about issue oriented marketing, versus like political candidates. So we've stuck to more issue oriented topics, and we've had some of these guys like Jeff Bridges, who's not a Gen Zer, but everyone loves the dude. We've had him come in and write columns about the environment and causes that are important to Gen Z. And again, we're doing the sort of pull method, where we're like, Gen Z's peeking over the fence to see what we're doing, and we're pulling them in that way. And we're trying, as Bob Guccione Jr. says, the founder of Spin, who now works with us, he says, we're not going to kiss the butts of the Gen Zers. They're going to come see the interesting things we're doing, which I think is a lot of what you're doing at JBL, which is, you're putting these programs out there and having people make content. And that content is the storytelling you're using to tell the JBL story. But yeah, that's been our approach.
Got it. Great.
Yeah. And thanks for the question.
Figured I'd start it off.
Yeah. And there is a question in the chat panel here. This is from, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Tonette Carrion. I'd love to hear Chris share what percentage his team spends on performance, growth, and paid digital marketing. It sounds like it's minimal, which is powerful since more traditional marketers are having a hard time transitioning into the creator and versatile content creation brand strategies. So I think the question is that they'd like to know the percent of your time you guys spend on performance, growth, and paid.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it is not something we do, right? It's not something we ignore. There's differences in how we look at it, right? So there's growth amongst like, oh, look at our Instagram following is growing. That's great because it gives you scale. But the reality is it's thinking through, again, back to what I said earlier, how we're creating deeper, more meaningful conversations. At the same time, we obviously have an e-com team that I work very closely. My team works very closely to make sure we're sharing learnings, thinking about new strategies to find consumers. But even in what we do in some of the, we'll call it e-com and more below the line marketing, we're still trying to use a little bit more depth and value and interest. So when you find content about Giannis, and maybe it's through something we serve to you, hopefully you're going to get to the page that talks about his favorite products or his favorite songs or things he's doing with us. It's not just click to buy, 15% off. Like that's the sort of the stuff you need to do. But we really try to make it more where there's a value and you leave either knowing something a little bit more interesting about someone that you saw in the ad or a brand or something we're doing. So there's the obvious, like, of course you need to drive business and hit numbers, but we're really trying to do it in a way where every exchange, every interaction is deeper than or something more than you didn't know before you clicked, as opposed to, again, click here to buy one get one free, or whatever the kind of the old school marketing strategies would have been.
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, and she said, awesome, thank you, in the chat here. I think what you're saying is interesting on anything that would be considered performance. It's really within your ambassador network and within the
Mm-hmm.
celebrities and content creators you work with. It's really about explaining why the product is important to them versus click now, buy now. It's, you've got a talent you're working with, like a BB Rexa or someone else who's part of your content ambassador network, and they're having to explain and tell a story about why the product is important to them, because at the end of the day, that's what their followers care about. They're following BB, right? They're probably hopefully following JBL too, but they care about BB. So
100%.
BB
Yeah.
BB has to tell a story that and walk her followers over this bridge almost to say, well, this is why this product is important to me. And that is the performance aspect, I think, is BB talking about the why behind the product that she's helping promote.
Absolutely. And I think some brand managers, the whole drink the Kool-Aid mentality. I think a lot of people at big brand companies with these, JBL's been around 75 years, right? It's really easy to say, no, they want to hear from JBL. Of course they do, because we're JBL. But the reality is, I'd rather hear from BB Rexa too. I mean, the story she tells is going to be more compelling than a brand who obviously at the end of the day is saying, hey, buy, make sure you buy, make sure you buy. So we really try to use the voice of our ambassadors. When we talk sports, we say it all the time. Leagues give you scale, teams give you regionality and hospitality, and players tell stories. So it's the same strategy. It's like use people that are interesting, find people that are interesting, have them tell their story, and let that translate to your brand, and not the other way around.
Wow, that's good. I just made a couple notes. Leagues give you scale, players tell you stories. That's
Yeah.
And what did you say? Is it teams in that scale bucket as well?
Is that your alarm to wake up? What is that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's only 10 a.m. here on the West Coast, Chris.
No, teams give you regionality, or a lot of times it's hospitality and more like customer base. But teams give you regionality.
Nice.
Right? It gives you regional relevance.
Yep.
But a
Love that.
player can be from anywhere, and it's about their story. Like Giannis is our flagship ambassador. His story is I mean, he was as known as being an MVP as he was for being on 60 Minutes, and the story and the perseverance he and his brothers had coming from Greece and of very limited means to where they are today. I mean, it's the story is better than anyone and any dunk or any buzzer beater shot that he's going to make in his career.
Yeah. No, definitely interesting. Well, any other questions from the community here? Any other Q&A? I'll give people a minute or two. And while we're waiting on some more questions to come in, I know when we had spoken before, you said you guys work a little bit with the Grammys. The Grammys is maybe not a Gen Z platform. I know our topic is Gen Z, but what are you guys doing with the Grammys? That was a pretty recent event, and figured I'd ask.
Yeah, you know what? And actually, it's funny because we didn't even talk about that. But it's the Grammys again. It's easy to write a check and have marks to something. But one of the ways we're working with the Grammys right now, and it's still really in its infancy stages, is working through helping cultivate the next crop of artists, right? So the Grammys, when you think of the Grammys, you think of the ones who have made it, right? And they either are nominated for getting, or they're not happy because they didn't get nominated for a Grammy. But what about the millions and multi-millions of artists who are either singing at a local bar or on a small stage or opening for the act that's already a small act? So we're working with them now on building out. Actually, that'll be my next. We can make that our next talk, and I'd want you on that with me. Yeah. We're working with them now on how to help the next kind of crop of artists in their careers. And then in addition, I don't want to discount that we are, as an official Grammy sponsor, we do a lot of activation around the actual event, both when it's live and or digitally, and some other activations we do.
Nice. Yeah. So kind of emerging artists and in that world is one of the.
Yeah. And what's great is they're figuring that out too. They also have a college marketing program. So there's a lot of concentric circles and ways in which we're partnering with them.
Yeah. Nice. Wow. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we'll probably wrap up. And unless there's anything else you wanted to share, Chris, I will say I did go out to the JBL headquarters out near Northridge.
Yep.
And got to see a bunch of the new products and everything on display, and including some of the other Harman brands. And it's really impressive. If anyone's out in the LA area and gets a chance to tour the facility, it's a pretty incredible showroom and interactive. And yeah, I'm impressed with what is going on at JBL. And Yeah.
And where you went is it's actually it's a great business challenge because you have this pro division, right, which is from everything from speaker upgrades in movie theaters and bars to like full scale stadiums like MSG and Disney World and massive venues. So how do you use these brands which have a very professional and specific use case for this consumer who you also want to buy headphones and portables to a whole new demographic of Gen Z. So it's been like the best B school case business question that we're trying to crack now. Whereas on the college side, just one last thing I'll leave with when you were asking that before, we had this college program. I mentioned Jbl Campus, and the easy way to do college marketing is you go on campus. That's what you do, right?
Yeah.
You table and you do experiences. Well, college right now as a whole is the definition of college: half are home, half are in school, half are at campus but not on campus, and they're in their apartments. So we've actually pivoted that entire program to be our launch platform for TikTok. And so the entire JBL campus for this semester, while we look at what's going on with COVID and what campuses do for these couple of months, has moved to an entire TikTok platform based program. And that's just, listen, for any of these, kind of newer, younger marketers who are just sitting there thinking for your business. Like if you don't say pivot right now, 17 times a day, figuring out how to navigate this crazy world we're living, it's just like, nothing that you think is working is going to be the way to kind of get through COVID. So it was I credit the team for thinking through like how do we think through a program that's meant to be physical. It's the whole point of it. You go and you talk to people and you demo products and you put headphones on your ears and you do things. So it's been a really great business challenge to figure that out now. And so we're in this infancy stage of a TikTok college program.
Nice. Yeah. Wow. That's great. It's we got two questions.
All right.
This is for you, Chris. How are you measuring the impact that a player, team, or league is bringing value to the brand?
Very fair question. So we have some of the baseline metrics, right? Like impressions and engagements and things like that. But we're looking at them also on newer fronts that we hadn't before. So quality conversations that they're generating through the content we post, right? Like 10 years ago, you just literally figured out how many commas you had in your impressions number, and that was success. But suddenly now we're much more focused on quality conversations. And then kind of to the original question that we were talking about before is even how they drive click to buy. So we know that when we put Giannis content on Amazon, it does better than other types of content we put. So we're trying to apply kind of where art meets science in that whole piece. On the team side, it's very much customer focused and how we're building relationships with retailers in the regions in which these teams that we have deals with go. And then the league, it's a number of things. It's both engagement and impressions. I mean, it's a much wider space. The league also gives us a lot of access to things like activating at All-Star Game, draft events, and things like that, which in a COVID world, pivot. We've been trying to think through new solutions for. So it's a little bit of it's kind of art science, but pushing much more towards the engagement side than we'd ever been before.
Nice. Okay. And just a real quick final
Sure.
question. Any predictions for the next few years for emerging technologies in your industry?
Wow, that's a heavy one. I'll start with probably what it's going to feel like an easy answer, but it's got a lot of kind of depth behind it, which is the impact of voice. So and smart home, smart everything, and not just the individual things like light bulbs and stoves, but how the ecosystem of your home will become one. How what you search for might then translate to something in your house, or something you say might all the way that smart works, smart technology, that will hit an inflection point though with all the data privacy and how that will all coexist. So there's like kind of this highway called voice activated and smart technology, and there's this highway called like data privacy and protection, and they're going to start to go like this, and figuring out how that turns into value that products can provide is going to be a wild ride over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Nice. Wow. It's really interesting. And great to hear your perspectives on these emerging technologies, Chris. And thanks for all the insights on Gen Z. This has been an exciting fireside chat. We didn't have a fire to chat next to, but
But our background's like fiery, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
our
But I'll
background.
tell you this, and I'll thank the Brand Innovators because they reconnected you and I after about 15 years. So it's the whole spirit of networking, and make sure you everyone on this call hopefully is connecting with each other and building their networks.
I agree. Yeah, it is important to keep up with your network, and yeah, super glad we reconnected, Chris. It's
Yeah.
fun to chat with you today.
Yeah. So
So.
I was 7 when we met, by the way. So that's good.
Yes, I was 7 when you guys, I was just thinking that I was like 15 years ago. I wish we could reminisce about 15 years ago, but unfortunately, I barely remember 15 years ago. But I do remember this past year in quarantine, I actually got my first JBL speaker. It's like the cool one that it kind of looks like your background when the music plays, and like it moves with the music. I'm obsessed with it. I'm a big fan. So was definitely super interested in this conversation and hearing about how audio and how technology is going to be a big part of how Gen Z is disrupting industries. And I loved what y'all had to say around, really not just thinking about like who has the most number of followers, but who has a story to tell, right? And who's really engaging with culture and creating culture in an interesting and creative way. And like, that's how we think about influencer marketing at Jude, right? In terms of like the influencers that we work with, I think there's a lot of agencies out there just like focused on how many followers they have or their aesthetic, but it's more about like, is this story true for them to be saying, right? Yeah. And is it a meaningful partnership that makes sense, right? That people will buy into, because it's not just a transaction, but it's a relationship. And so I think the way that you talked about BB and the way that you talked about like how you're thinking about partnerships and influencer marketing, I think is exactly on point and like what we try to tell our brands to do and how I think of things. And I also love that you said you can't think about Gen Z without thinking of college, because I am at college right now in New Haven, Connecticut. And so certainly I'm thinking about my thesis that I have to be writing, as well as Gen Z all day, every day. And so the two are very much the one and the same to me, but certainly a lot to think about as I, graduate and even already in the workforce, like fully integrate into the workforce and thinking about where we all go from here. So this was an awesome conversation, and thank you.
Maybe Chris will send you some headphones for a graduation present.
I would be the happiest boy in the world. I literally messaged my team today and was like, I'm CEO of this company for one reason and one reason only, and it's free product. Like nothing else. There's nothing else. There's no other reason why I do what I do. But thank you both, Chris and Jimmy, so much for helping to kick today's summit off. I learned a lot. It was such a joy to listen to y'all, and I'm excited to definitely keep the conversation going, as you guys said. I certainly hope that 15 years down the line, we'll be at a Brand Innovators Summit and be able to reminisce about how 15 years earlier we met on this very Zoom call. And hopefully next time we'll have a real fire